So this is a Dharma talk. Although we open this Dharma talk period with 3 bells, the same way we open a sitting period, it's a little more informal than when we're just sitting and meditating. So if you need to change your position or put your knees up, that's quite okay to do that during the Dharma talk. This is the 10th talk that we've been having, a whole series of talks on the Faith Mind Sutra. And this is the last part of the sutra. I'm not sure I thought when I began this that there would be 10 talks, but that's how much it's turned out to be to cover it. So for those of you who are coming in at the end of a long series of talks, it may not make a lot of sense to you, but that's all right because Dharma talks often don't make a lot of sense anyway. Dharma talks are said to be dark to the mind but radiant to the heart. So they don't make a kind of logical sense sometimes, but they do resonate on some level. So I'm going to begin by reading this Faith Mind Sutra. It's a little lengthy, I apologize for that, but I think that in order to get the lines that we're going to talk about in detail today, you need to have a context for it. So this is called the Faith Mind Sutra. It was written thousands of years ago by a Chinese Buddhist called Seng Sen. And this is what he had to say. He was trying to pass on his realization, the truth as he saw it. So he says, the great way is not difficult for those who have no preferences. When love and hate are both absent, everything becomes clear and undisguised. Make the smallest distinction, however, and heaven and earth are set infinitely apart. If you wish to see the truth, then hold no opinions for or against anything. To set up what you like against what you dislike is the disease of the mind. When the deep meaning of things is not understood, the mind's essential peace is disturbed to no avail. The way is perfect like vast space with nothing lacking and nothing in excess. Indeed, it is due to our choosing to accept or reject that we do not see the true nature of things. Live neither in the entanglements of outer things nor in inner feelings of emptiness. Be serene in the oneness of things, and such erroneous views will disappear by themselves. When you try to stop activity to achieve quietness, your very effort fills you with activity. As long as you remain in one extreme or the other, you will never know oneness. Those who do not live in the single way fail in both activity and quietness, in assertion and denial. To deny the reality of things is to miss their reality. To assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. The more you talk and think about it, the further astray you wander from the truth. Stop talking and thinking, and there is nothing you will not be able to know. To return to the root is to find the meaning, but to pursue appearances is to miss the source. At the moment of inner enlightenment, there is a moment of going beyond appearance and emptiness. The changes that appear to occur in the empty world we call real only because of our ignorance. Do not search for the truth, only cease to cherish opinions. Do not remain in the dualistic state. Avoid such pursuits carefully. If there is even a trace of this and that, of right and wrong, the mind will be lost in confusion. Although all dualities come from the one, do not be attached even to this one. When the mind exists undisturbed in the way, nothing in this world can bother us. And when a thing can no longer bother us, it ceases to exist in the old way. When no discriminating thoughts arise, the mind ceases to exist. When thought objects vanish, the thinking subject vanishes. Just as the mind vanishes, objects vanish. Things are objects because of the mind. The mind is such because of things. Understand the relativity of these two and the unity of emptiness. In this emptiness, the two are indistinguishable, and each contains in itself the whole world. If you do not discriminate between coarse and fine, you will not be tempted to prejudice and opinion. To live in the great way is neither easy nor difficult, but those with limited views are fearful and irresolute. The faster they hurry, the slower they go, and attachment cannot be limited. Even to be attached to the idea of enlightenment is to go astray. Just let things be in their own way, and there will be neither coming nor going. Obey your own nature, and you will walk freely and undisturbed. When thought is in bondage, the truth is hidden, and everything is murky and unclear. The burdensome practice of judging brings annoyance and weariness. What benefit can be derived from distinctions and separations? If you wish to move in the one way, do not dislike even the world of senses and ideas. Indeed, to accept them fully is identical with true enlightenment. Wise ones strive for no goals, but foolish people fetter themselves. There is one Dharma, not many. Distinctions arise from the clinging needs of the ignorant. To seek mind with a discriminating mind is the greatest of all mistakes. Rest and unrest derive from illusion. With enlightenment, there is no liking and disliking. All dualities come from ignorant inference. They are life dreams or flowers in the air. It is foolish to try to grasp them. Gain and loss, right and wrong, such thoughts must finally be abolished all at once. If the eye never sleeps, all dreams will naturally cease. If the mind makes no discriminations, the 10,000 things are as they are, of a single essence. To understand the mystery of this one essence is to be released from all entanglements. When all things are seen equally, the timeless self-essence is reached. There are no comparisons or analogies in this ceaseless, relationless state. Consider movement stationary and the stationary to be in motion. Then movement and rest disappear. When such dualities cease to exist, oneness of itself cannot exist. To this ultimate finality, no law or description applies. For the united mind, in accord with the way, all self-centered striving ceases. Doubts and irresolutions vanish, and life in true faith is possible. With a single stroke, we are freed from bondage. Nothing clings to us, and we hold on to nothing. All is empty, clear, and self-illuminating, with no exertion of the mind's power. Here, thought, feeling, knowledge, and imagination are of no value. In this world of suchness, there is neither self nor other than self. Okay, so that brings us to the lines that we're going to talk about today and to the end of the sutra. So here are the lines for today. To come directly into harmony with this reality, just simply say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate. Nothing is excluded, no matter when or where. Enlightenment means entering this truth, and this truth is beyond extension or decrease in time and space. In a single thought is 10,000 years. Emptiness here, emptiness there. But the infinite universe stands always before your eyes, infinitely large and infinitely small. No difference, for definitions have vanished. and no boundaries are seen. So too with being and non-being. Don't waste time in doubts and arguments that have nothing to do with this. One thing, all things, move among and intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. To live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. Words. The way is beyond language, for in it there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. So that is how he ends his hundreds of lines here. So the first lines for today: to come directly into harmony with this reality, just simply say when doubt arises, not to. In this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded, no matter where or when. So what reality does Sang-san want us to come into harmony with? He's referring to the reality he mentioned in the line before this one. So this is a line that we covered last week, in which he made a major switch in his sutra and began to talk about suchness. This line says, in this world of suchness, there is neither self nor other than self. So the question is, what is this suchness, and why does the sutra equate it with reality? Suchness is sometimes also called thusness. They're both the same thing, just different words for the same thing. This is a term that's used mostly in Mahayana Buddhism, which we are part of. What it means is ultimate reality, the way things really are. The true nature of ultimate reality is ineffable. It's beyond description. It's beyond conceptualization. Zen stresses that suchness is revealed in the mundane and the ordinary. This is the Zen point of view about suchness. So Zen would see suchness in things like the way the wind ripples through a field of grass. Or in our last session, we talked about the cypress tree in the garden, such things as that. We could even see suchness in the Benjamin Franklin Bridge. It doesn't have to be nature. It can be a man-made thing. Everything has suchness. The most famous Zen example of suchness is when the Buddha gives transition to his disciple, Mahakayasapa. Buddha holds up a flower, and Mahakayasapa smiles, and neither of them say anything. And so that is an example of suchness. Buddha presents suchness. Mahakayasapa indicates that he gets it by smiling, and that's that. Suchness expresses both the impermanent nature of the world, where each individual moment is different from the last. But at the same time in suchness, while we experience the ordinary physical reality of things, we also see them as part of a larger whole, part of a pattern of interacting parts. And these parts cannot be separated. So when you see suchness, you're seeing both sides of reality, the ordinary everyday reality and a larger reality. In Zen, if you only see the ordinary everyday reality, this is called delusion, because you're missing something else. But if you only see the extraordinary reality of things and you're missing the ordinary everyday reality, you're in trouble, because you can't function in ordinary life. So in suchness, we see the detailed individual reality of each thing. but we also see its oneness, its basic sameness with other things. I am an individual, an idiosyncratic, separate person, and I'm not like you. Yet, you and I are exactly the same on the level of our basic humanity. So it's seeing both aspects at once that is the deepest reality of things. And this we call suchness. So in suchness we encounter the miracle, the mystery of everyday life. Suchness reveals a reality that cannot be adequately explained. It must be intuitively realized. That is why you're sitting in meditation, so you can intuitively realize it. Sengsan continues, in this world of suchness, he wants us to come into harmony with this. He tells us that in this world there is neither self nor other than self. Why is that? Because in this world nothing is separate, nothing is independent, nothing stands alone. In past talks, we have gone deeply into why Buddhism says there's no separation. So I'm not going to go through all that again. Sengsan continues by giving us a suggestion. He says that when we have lost touch with this world of suchness, we should just simply say when doubt arises, not to. He tells us to remind ourselves that we're not separate, and that the changeable outward aspect of things is not separate from the emptiness of the things, which does not change. Form is emptiness. The relative is the absolute. Everything changes, but the basic nature of things is unborn and undying. And to experience suchness, we need to keep both of these sides in mind. This is what Sengsan means by the second line in this section. He says, in this not to, nothing is separate, nothing is excluded, no matter when or where. If all things are the same from one point of view, then clearly nothing is separate from anything else. And he adds, not at any time, not in any place. The sutra continues to talk about suchness and enlightenment. The lines go, enlightenment means entering this truth, and this truth is beyond extension or decrease in time and space. And a single thought is 10,000 years. Here he equates this world of suchness with enlightenment. He says enlightenment means entering this truth. What he's telling us is exactly what we say here all the time. That enlightenment means seeing both sides, seeing form and emptiness, relative and absolute. If you get stuck in either point of view, you end up as that board-carrying fellow, somebody with a board over his shoulder, so that he can see in one direction, he can see one side, but can't see the other side because the board is blocking his view. So we call that a board-carrying fellow, somebody who only sees one side. Either side is not it. It takes both sides to make the truth. Sengsan says the truth is beyond extension or decrease in time and space. He's saying this is true at all times, in all places. And he adds what may seem difficult to believe. He says, in a single thought is 10,000 years. How does he arrive at this? Another way of saying this might be, in the span of time it takes to have one thought, this is equal to 10,000 years. Or you could say each moment is 10,000 years. It's another way of saying it. We know that our practice stresses being in the moment. We know that when you are whole body and mind present to a single moment, then you're completely immersed in it. There is only that moment. There is nothing to compare it to, nothing to measure it by, because that's all there is. This is how a single thought, a single moment can be the same as 10,000 years. Each moment becomes limitless, timeless. Each experience of suchness is timeless. It takes place in a moment. The sutra continues, emptiness here, emptiness there. But the infinite universe stands always before your eyes, infinitely large and infinitely small. In these lines, we encounter again our old friend emptiness. This causes a lot of stress among Zen students, emptiness. So we're going to briefly remind ourselves what Buddhism means by emptiness. Emptiness is just the word that Buddhism chooses to describe the basic nature of the universe. So what Buddhism sees is the basic nature of things is change, flux. The most basic teacher of Buddhism says everything arises, everything falls away. Change. So if things change from moment to moment, then they're not exactly the same thing from moment to moment. Therefore, Buddhism concludes that there are no unchanging permanent objects. There are only changing objects. And because objects are not permanent and unchanging, then Buddhism calls them empty. So all it means empty, it doesn't mean they don't exist. It simply means that they're not the same thing each moment because they're always changing. What they're empty of is permanence. That's all. So when Sengsan says emptiness here, emptiness there, he's simply affirming the Buddhist teachings that all things, no exceptions, are changing, impermanent, empty. He then continues the thought by saying, but the infinite universe stands always before your eyes, infinitely large and infinitely small. When we are in the world of suchness, the universe that we see is infinite. It is a universe that extends to the ends of time and space. How could it be otherwise when all things are connected into one great whole? The one great whole is the whole universe to the ends of space and time. The infinite universe, we are told, is infinitely large and infinitely small. How does that work? It is just the same way that a single thought is 10,000 years. How can things be infinitely large and infinitely small at the same time? That's because in suchness we're immersed in right here, right now, and that is all there is. If that's all there is, then there's nothing to compare anything to. Because there's only one thing, one whole, one universe, one net of Indra. So how can we say it's either big or small? What other universe would we be measuring it against? It just is what it is. The sutra goes on to say, no difference, for definitions have vanished and no boundaries are seen. So too with being and non-being. Don't waste time in doubts and arguments that have nothing to do with this. Again, Sengsan points out that when we look from the world of suchness, all things are empty, and thus there is no difference between them on the level of emptiness. Just as no difference between you and I on the level of our humanness. When we don't see things as separate, naturally, there are no boundaries to be seen. He then says, so too with being and non-being. He means there's no difference with them either. What does he mean by being and non-being? He means form and emptiness. Being is form. He's just calling it being. and non-being is emptiness. He says there's no difference between them. So what he's saying in this line is that being and non-being, form and emptiness, are like the rest of the infinite universe. There are no boundaries. They are part of a larger whole. Form is emptiness. Emptiness is form. He adds this warning then to these lines. He says, don't waste time in doubt and arguments that have nothing to do with this. He's just saying, since this is the ultimate truth, don't doubt it. And don't waste time arguing about it. Then he says, one thing, all things, move among and intermingle without distinction. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. To live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. One thing, all things, move among and intermingle without distinction. Here he's telling us that each individual thing, all the parts of the great whole, are related to each other, and they all move and they all change, and each influences the others and is in turn influenced by all the others. He says they do this without distinction. This is because when we see both sides of the truth, reality always includes the absolute point of view, the point of view of emptiness. So since everything is empty, then everything is identical to everything else on that level. All things have the same basic nature, emptiness. Therefore, in their essential nature, there is no distinction between them, no distinction between a horse and a cat, a man or a woman, a tree or a stone. I mean, clearly there are many differences, but not on the level of emptiness. Then he makes this extraordinary statement. To live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. The truth is that we all have a great deal of anxiety about non-perfection. We have anxiety about our own non-perfection, about other people's non-perfections, about the non-perfection of our lives and of our world. So Sengsen says to live in this realization is to be without anxiety about non-perfection. So what realization is he talking about here? He's talking about the realization that there is ultimately no distinction between things. Why does this realization take away our anxiety about non-perfection? It's because our dreams of perfection always involve comparison. We compare the actual things and situations that we have to how they would be in their imagined perfection. Perfection is always imagined because it's not possible in a world where the relative everyday world is always half of reality. Perfection is only possible in emptiness. It's possible because in this world there are no distinctions, so there can be no difference between the perfect and the non-perfect. Another way of looking at it is to remember that in the absolute all things are already perfect. Being perfect on the level of emptiness, we can let go of our anxiety about what we think of as our imperfections on the relative human level. The sutra goes on further to say, to live in this faith is the road to non-duality, because the non-dual is one with the trusting mind. What faith is he asking us to live in? He's asking us to live in the faith of suchness, which contains both the truth of oneness and the truth of separateness. In each moment of suchness, we bring these truths together. This, he tells us, is the road to non-duality. Not one side only, not the other side only, but both sides together. The trusting mind is a mind that trusts in the ultimate perfection of all things, because all things are empty and interdependent. Another way of saying this, a more religious way, is to say all things have Buddha nature. Each thing is its unique and individual self, and at the same time each thing is empty, sharing Buddha nature with every other thing. The trusting mind trusts in Dharma. Dharma is the teachings of Buddhism, but only experienced Dharma. You have to see it for yourself. The trusting mind trusts both your own ultimate perfection and your human frailty. Both aspects are one and the same, with no distinction between them. Finally, he ends the sutra by saying, words, the way is beyond language, for in it there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. So in concluding his sutra, Sengsan completely undercuts the whole thing. He has just spent over 100 lines using very skillful and beautiful words to try to teach us his own personal truth, what he has realized. But now he is reminding us, and probably himself as well, that the way is beyond language. He calls out in frustration, words, with an exclamation point. That is what I call out almost every time I write a talk. Why is the way beyond language? By the way, Sengsan means the Dharma, the Buddhist teaching, Zen practice. That's the way. It is beyond words because its basic truths are just these paradoxical truths that he's been trying to tell us about, oneness and two-ness. He has spent the sutra talking about oneness, but telling us not to get attached to the idea of oneness, not to forget that there is another side to the truth. At one point, he said, as long as you remain in one extreme, i.e. one side or the other, you will never know oneness. At another point in the sutra, he says, to deny the reality of things is to miss their reality. So that's the relative. If you say things don't exist, then you're denying an obvious reality. You're going to bump into a lot of walls if you say they don't exist. But he also says to assert the emptiness of things is to miss their reality. If, on the other hand, you say they're empty, then you're denying their everyday, ordinary reality. So he's always telling us, you've got to put these two together. He says, at the moment of inner enlightenment, there is going beyond form and emptiness, appearance and emptiness. It is just because the real truths of the Dharma are contradictory and don't make sense that they are beyond language. Language can only convey one side of the truth, the side of ideas, the side of logic, the side of philosophy. That is why all those Sengsan's words, and mine also, sound very logical and explanatory. You're not all suddenly enlightened. It's because the paradoxical truths of Dharma are only available to you through your own experience. You have to intuit them. They are wisdom, not knowledge, that can be taught. In Zen, we say you have to drink the water yourself and know if it is cold or not. It has to be personal experience. Sengsan ends his sutra this way. For in it, there is no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. This it he's talking about is the way. He says, in the way, there's no yesterday, no tomorrow, no today. There is only this moment, only suchness, only no separation. So there's no way to stand apart from time and measure it. Each moment is all there is. It pervades all time and all space. So how do we live from this truth? By seeing each moment clearly in all its singularity, knowing that it will never be repeated, yet also seeing it from a larger perspective as part of a perfect whole. Although Seng-san laments that words cannot convey the truth, he has made a valiant try. He has used words skillfully in a way that's very alive. Sometimes poetry can succeed where prose cannot. So we've come to the end of the sutra and to the end of my efforts to wrap words around Seng-san's truths. The sutra rewards study and familiarity. I hope that now, having a little bit of insight into what his words might mean, you'll continue to study this sutra and sit with it. If you would like a hard copy of the sutra, it's on our website. You can print it out. After all, Seng-san promises us that if you realize these teachings, he says, with a single stroke, you will be freed from bondage. And wouldn't that be nice?